All right, folks, thanks for being here. We're going to open up the floor over to the far right. Nathan Baird, Cleveland.com.
Ryan, it's not, I guess, necessarily that Kyle has had protection issues like chronically, but there were a couple of instances last week with the fumble and the grounding call, and there's been a couple of other plays like that. I guess just how are you counseling him right now through those situations as I guess he continues to grow in the way that he anticipates those pressure situations in that?
Yeah, the number one most important thing is the football, and that's going to be the way this weekend. It's a huge part of the game, and we got to take care of the football across the board. We got to make great decisions, and know when to cut your losses. Have a plan for when it goes, the way that you expect it to, but have a plan for when it goes, sideways. And I think it's really what you have to do every time you go into a play is, okay, here's what we expect. When it doesn't go that way, I might have to be in a management situation, which is let's not make bad plays any worse. And that's all part of playing the position.
Obviously would have been part of the planning and everything last year for a game like this. And when you're seeing a team like this for the second time, are you building off of concepts and stuff that he would have already maybe been familiar with going into a week like this?
We play so many games and there's so many, just different practices. But I think the good thing is, again, for somebody who's been in the system for a couple of years, they've been through preparation before, they've been through, game planning situations. They've seen the games live. I think a lot of our guys understand what this game is going to be, the intensity. But yeah, now that, the coordinators have been there for a couple of years, there's a little bit of a familiarity there, but they change year in and year out. Their personnel changes, it changes in the game. So, but it is good to have some guys that aren't doing it for the first time.
Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row.
Ryan, you guys look like you got a little bit more creative in the way that you guys use motion and things on Saturday. Is that part of the progression with Kyle and just giving him more and giving this offense a little more with each week?
Yeah, I think every week we want to keep adding more and growing. There's give and take to everything that you do. You want to give the guys a clean plan. You want them, when you move something post-snap, like you said, or pre-snap, like you said, the pictures change. It changes for the guys up front. It changes for the quarterback. There's always give and take, but then it also changes the picture for the defense as well. So, every week we'll try to add more and more different wrinkles, keep adding to what we think can stress out defenses.
He's your fourth new starter since you got to Ohio State. Is this like on progression with where the other guys were with giving them more? Is it like game 6, game 7 when you start to give them more, or is that different for the quarterback?
That's probably about right. Yeah, I think that it's similar maybe than some of the other guys. I think that he's probably right on pace.
Jeremy Birmingham, Rivals, the podcast.
And looking back at Saturday, Purdue did a really nice job pressure. Wise blitzed a lot. You saw Kyle sort of throwing off the back foot a lot, maybe not getting the arm strength that you expect to see. Is that coachable? Is that just a kid reacting to the pressure, or is it a mechanical breakdown somewhere else?
I think there was a little bit of both going on. I think they brought, one more. You saw some zero pressure, and anytime that happens, we'll certainly see some of that this week, where they bring one more than you can block. And when that happens, sometimes you do have to drift away from the extra defender to buy yourself enough time for the receivers to get open. And in that moment, you may take the ball a little bit off the ball to allow the receiver to react. But there were other times where that wasn't the case, where, like you said, there was either a breakdown in protection, which, certainly the O-line has their part of it, but also it's it's just tight ends, it's the running backs, it's everybody involved. But certainly what we want to do is we want to take a good drop. We want to get our feet in the ground, and all the power from throwing the ball comes from your cleats being in the dirt. So, there were some times probably where we're drifting a little too much.
Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Ryan, how much did you recruit Drew Aller when he was in high school, and just kind of what was that relationship like?
Well, he's an Ohio kid who had a great career. We already had Quinn Ewers committed to us, and then there was a reclassification, and at that point, he was already committed to Penn State. But a lot of respect for him, for his program, and certainly being from the state of Ohio. He's a very good player.
What do you think of the player he is now, and kind of what kind of threats is he going to pose to the defense?
I think he's done a good job in his first year. He's had poise. He's a big, strong quarterback who, leads the team well and manages the game well and has a good makeup. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him.
Cameron T. Robinson, the Athletic.
Brian, that touchdown, Kyle threw to Cade, where he just kind of ripped it in that tight window there. Kyle seems to be getting more and more confident with his arm and his eyes, just letting the ball rip more. How have you seen that growth over these first 6 weeks?
Yeah, I think every week it improves, it gets better. There's certain things that you see for the first time every time you're out there. I think the one thing that's unique about our opponents this year is that almost every defense has been significantly different week in and week out. You saw something last week that we hadn't really prepared for in the last couple of years with very different defense. Notre Dame was different. Maryland was very different. Each week, the fronts are different, the coaches are different. So it's great learning for all of our guys to be able to identify what they're up against, learn from it, and then grow.
Have a quarterback like that who's gaining that confidence and just trusting his arm, his eyes more. What's that conversation like with him as you try to add more to his play?
Yeah, I think you're trying to build the confidence up, and you're trying to challenge everybody, but certainly Kyle to grow in certain areas, and he's responded well to that. I think he's responded well to the challenges. I mean, this challenge that we have this week is going to be a big one. This is a very good team, very good defense. Certainly well documented that they're the best defense in the country statistically. Have a lot of guys returning off of last year's team, so he knows we got to have a great week, and that's for everybody on the team. We got to have a great week of preparation, obviously.
Tony Girdman, Buckeye Huddle.
Ryan, how can you tell you're facing a great defense if they haven't faced any top offenses?
Well, what they are coming off of last year. They're a very, very good defense, and you can see the turnovers they're creating, and they played against some solid teams. It's not like they haven't played against anybody. They played against some Big Ten teams, and you can just see the one-on-one matchups. And then also, like you said, coming off of last year, I mean, these guys have played before, and some veteran guys on that side of the ball. So I mean, they're a very good defense.
And they've created some turnovers this year, a bunch of interceptions against Illinois. How much do you talk to Kyle about that this week? Is it more than any other week, or the same as it always is?
Just like every week. Yeah. It's just when you're in games like this, as we know, it could come down to one play. So everything is amped up. The consequences are higher, the stakes are higher, and that's the way you want it. We've already been in one of these games this year, but it's just a reminder when you get in these types of games.
Dave Biddle, 24/7 Sports.
Dallin Hayden got his first extended action. What did you see out of him that you liked?
Yeah, I thought when the ball was in his hand, he did some really good things. I thought our O-line opened up some better holes, but Dallin ran hard as well. I thought once he got through the line of scrimmage, he got up to the safeties, and one run in particular, he really lowered his shoulder and ran the safety over, which I think he's number 31 for Purdue, is a really good young safety, and he finished that run really well. So that was probably his best run. But you saw his feet move in the hole, and that was great, especially for somebody who hasn't really played this year.
He seems like one of those guys when the lights come on, he always performs, like going back to the Maryland game last year against Purdue. Is there something holding him back in practice? Maybe that he's not doing well?
No, I think, again, that the best thing that Dallin does is when the ball's in his hand. And he does a nice job with that. I mean, there's certainly more to it than that, but we're happy with how he played on Saturday.
Over to the right, Don Barry, WDNS.
Coach, I don't know what you can get into. How healthy are you guys? Any word on Trey, Mayan, Mecca?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into all those guys, but hopeful that we'll have all those guys back for Saturday.
The other thing, you know what it's like playing over there, noon kick here. Just what's your message to the fans coming this week?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is, I know I talked to Gene about this, and one of the biggest things that he mentioned to me was getting everybody, in the stadium early. We want to do that. We've done that in the past, just to set the tone. But this is one of those games that, we've got to really create a hostile environment for Penn State, in particular their offense. When we're really loud in the stadium, anytime that their offense has the ball, it makes it very difficult to operate. The communication, the snap count, all of those things. And so the louder we can be, it doesn't matter whether it's third down, red zone, short yardage, if they're operating and they're on the field, the louder we can be, the more hostile that we can be, advantage Buckeyes. So, that's really one of the things this week that I'll be talking about, because, this is a big game, but we got them here in the shoe, and let's make it, as loud as we possibly can.
Clay Hall, WSYX.
When you're facing a defense like this, they're number one in a couple of categories, number two in another. Are you trying to find, is there a weakness to find, or that's not going to happen? Or when you sit around that table, somebody says, hey, I think we ought to, I've just noticed they don't do this well. I mean, has that moment happened, or that's not going to happen this week?
I think the first thing every time you're looking at a game plan, you look at the personnel, and then you look at the scheme, and you try to do the best you can based on the personnel you have, based on the personnel that they have. What gives our guys the best chance to be successful, to move the ball down the field and score touchdowns. There's a lot that comes with that. Certainly there's the schematics of it all. It's also what your team knows, what your team has practiced. There's also things that will come into the game plan that, are specific to your opponent. That's not any different this week than any other week, but there's a lot of hours spent in those meeting rooms going through that to make sure that, our players are playing fast. And I think that's important for coaches to, give them a clean plan, not to put too much on them. You don't want them thinking too much. You want them playing fast.
Austin Ward, the podcast, Rivals.
Ryan, I know you'd never use an injury for an excuse for a game, because you probably knew you weren't going to have a Mecca on Saturday. But how much do you feel that in a game, considering all the different ways that you can use a Mecca, and maybe some of the creative stuff that we saw, maybe with Xavier specifically? How much of that is just a product of not having a Mecca? Well,
yeah, Mecca. We all know the production that Mecca's had and the impact that he's had on our offense the last couple of years, and anytime you don't have somebody like that, it does affect your offense for sure. We do have great depth. When we lost Chip, we did get, we didn't panic, but it was concerning, because now you've lost three of your starting running backs, and three of your top running backs. And the great news was Dallin was able to step up in a big way. Xavier was able to step up in a big way. I thought Xavier, graded out a champion. He played well in a lot of areas. He's very versatile for us. You saw him doing a lot of things, running the ball, catching, blocking. And, when you have veteran guys like that who can do many things, you do have to get creative. You have to figure out ways to kind of make it work, because ultimately nobody cares. You got to figure out a way to get it done.
What is it about Xavier that allows you to use him in such a variety of ways?
I think the first thing is he became a great special teams player over his career here. So he's a really good football player fundamentally. The second thing is he played running back. He actually played cornerback for a little time here, and he's played receiver. So he's able to do many things. He can be physical and block because he's learned how to play special teams. He can carry the ball. He can run routes. And when you do that and you have that skill set, you're a real weapon.
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
With the situation that's going on with Chip Trey and Mayan right now, I know you guys wanted to redshirt him, but given the way he performed last week, but also what's going on with that room, has that decision changed at all, whether or not you guys redshirt him?
I mean, we're still going to do what we think is best to win every game, and it was great to see Dallin run out there and play well in the game. So, when that decision has to be made, we'll make that decision. That decision doesn't have to be made right now, because we still have a little bit more wiggle room. But, if it comes down to winning games, and certainly, we'll sit down with Dallin and make sure we're all on the same page. But I know Dallin wants to play, and Dallin wants to do what's best for himself, but also for Ohio State.
For us on the outside, when we see Dallin run, whether it's last year or on Saturday, it seems like he's hitting holes, reading it the right way. But sometimes the way you have talked about him in the past, it's you bring up stuff like the ball security, maybe the pass pro. Is he still developing those areas, and is the ball security an issue in practice? Because we haven't necessarily seen it.
No. I think, like you said, I mean, the number one job of running back is to take care of the ball. I think you can check that box, for Dallin. So that's been great. And so, the more opportunities he gets, the better he's going to be. And so we'll see how this week shakes out.
Steve Hellwagen, 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, Coach, the Devin Brown package there on the goal line, the red zone, just what were your thoughts? Looked like you had it down there 3 times with him, and got 2 touchdowns and then had the ball knocked out the other time, which kind of predictable, I suppose, with a guy in a new situation. Just what were your thoughts about how that all played out? Is it here to stay?
Yeah, I think when you get down into those type of situations, the numbers start to work against you on offense, and when you add the quarterback into it, it can change those numbers. But the great thing about Devin is that he can throw the ball well. You've seen the throw he made to Brandon at the end of the game. So he's not just a running quarterback. However, he is big, strong, and athletic and competitive. And so we, had been messing around a little bit with it, but felt like going into that game with the weather situation, at least the forecast about midweek, we can't get caught in a situation like we had in the past, maybe. So that was part of it. And then we added that down in the red zone and felt like it was a good package schematically, and wanted to let Devin go and kind of get his feet wet in that area and touch out any possible mistakes that may happen. I thought he ran hard. I thought he competed. I think he, hopefully learned his lesson there on that one, but it certainly does give us a different wrinkle, and we'll continue to build on that package.
Whitney Harding, WCMH.
Ryan, you just mentioned the weather. It's going to be similar potentially this weekend. So how good is it what the guys showed at Purdue as far as short yardage, third down, that you might have to replicate a big time this weekend?
Yeah, I mentioned it during the bye week. You're into October and November in the Big Ten, so it's gonna be at least 3 probably bad weather games, and so we got to handle it. So we'll practice in it this week if it shows up and be ready to go. But we got to be able to run our whole offense. We got to be able to run everything, but we'll always look for ways that we can adapt to the environment, adapt to the situation when appropriate.
Another interesting wrinkle you guys showed was a QB sneak, or coach push, whatever everybody wants to call it these days. It seems like an easy play, but how much goes into one, making that call on that play, and 2, go actually converting it?
Yeah, I mean, there's pluses and minuses to everything that you do, and we try to, we don't just have 1 or 2 plays in those situations. We have a handful of things that we work on, things that we save, things that we try to grow upon, things that we do in a game that we try to have a counter off of it, all those types of things. And so we felt like that was a good moment to get that right there and secure that first down, and we'll keep looking at ways to do everything we can to get that yard or 2 in short yardage.
Joey Cochran, Columbus Dispatch.
And just to follow up on Drew Aller's recruitment, you mentioned at the time Quinn reclassified, and then you looked at Drew and he was already committed to Penn State. Is recruiting a player in that situation kind of like trying to man the drive where you're backed up against your own goal line? I imagine it's difficult to really pull that off.
Yeah. If you're into those type of situations, for sure. We were always respectful of the situation. He was always respectful of the situation. He and his family were great, and it's kind of the way it played out. But a lot of respect for those guys.
Respectful, just
when you're committed somewhere and you have a relationship over time, it's just one of those things where you kind of talk to them and reach out and just see if anything were ever to change, let us know. But at the same time, he was committed to Penn State, and we respected that.
Earlier, you asked about guys who were hurt. Denzel wasn't in that group. Is the hope for him also to be back?
Yeah.
Dudley Maurice, Kings of Columbus.
Ryan, it seems like Penn State has, 3, 4, 5 guys who can really get after the passer.
Yeah.
What do you think of them, and what do you think of the way your offensive line has protected Kyle so far this year?
Well, I think there's always plays that we can improve on, but this will be, the biggest challenge to date. They're, very twitchy, very quick. They get after the quarterback at a high level. Both ends, are NFL players for sure. They've been very productive, disruptive, and so our tackles in particular are going to have to do a great job. They are creative about where they align guys and everything. So it's going to be everybody. They do a lot of moving and do a lot of blitzing. So we're going to be on our game, but it's been like that against Penn State for a long time.
And I think Penn State's second in the nation in time of possession. They haven't been very explosive offensively, but they grind it out. Numbers of plays for you guys and number of possessions has been something that's come up this year. Is there anything you have to prepare for in case this is a a short possession game because that's stylistically kind of how they play.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think they've done a really good job this year. They have a good offense, good offensive line, big and strong. Running backs run hard. But some of those games that they've been in with with all the turnovers, I think, and maybe the Iowa game, there was 90 to plays to like in the mid 30s, which I've never heard that before. And so they've done an unbelievable job of creating turnovers and giving their offense the ball. And then, like you said, they've kind of held on to the ball and played complementary football there. So, yeah, we got to look into all those things. Certainly, taking care of the football is going to be of utmost importance here. But no, they've done a nice job of that. So, we'll have to have contingency plans in place for that.
Brendan Gulick, Buckeyes Now on Sports Illustrated.
Coach, actually, kind of building off Doug's question, Penn State's almost dead last in the country in number of plays that have gone for 20 or more yards. They just haven't had a lot of explosive plays. I'm curious how hard it is to prepare for things that maybe you haven't seen on film. Like you think you know what a team's capable of because you see their talent, but how hard is it to prepare for something that you haven't actually seen?
Yeah, I guess that's a question that comes up at the beginning of every season, but when you're this far into the year, typically that's not something that gets talked about a whole lot. But to your point, they've done a lot of plays in plus territory and, certainly in the red zone. I think maybe they lead the country in most plays in the red zone. So, you may not see as many of those types of plays, but certainly, they have them.
And then, look, you're 6 games into the season. You've got enough of a body of work for your own resume here to look at. How pleased are you with the way your team is progressing from where you were at the beginning of camp to the beginning of the year to where you are now?
Well, it's, every week you come up for air and figure out where you want to get better, where you need to get better. And then, you kind of, identify the things that you need to continue to enhance, but then other things that you need to improve on. And, you go into the game and that, like I said, that's the test. Well, we got a big test on Saturday. So it's hard for me to say right now because this is just such a big game and our focus is all in this game. So, again, better idea after Saturday.
Rob Aller, Columbus Dispatch.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, you talked about the art of coaching, when to be patient, learning how to be patient, when to bite your tongue, when to be fiery. It seems like, and players confirm that you are a little more fiery this year. I think they call it you're cutting loose. The question is this something, you have the pulse of your team better than anybody. Is this something that's intentional that you're doing? Is this just a progression of being comfortable in your skin?
I think this team likes to get coached hard. I do. I think, they do. And this is a great team that can get pushed. And, they respond well. And this is a tough game. There's a lot riding on every game, and we know that. And so, it's my job to bring it every week, every Saturday, and push as hard as I can. But for the most part, it's thought out beforehand. I'm not just flying off the handle. Although I guess every once in a while, I guess I would. But I think the guys like to see the passion. I think they like to see that part of it. And so it's my job to bring that, and I'm going to continue to do that.
You're more comfortable doing it, or were you ever not comfortable?
Well, I think it kind of depends on your team. Yeah, I think it does. I think you got to do the best you can as a leader to lead your team and what your team needs in that game, in that moment, in that year. And, my feeling is this is what this team has needed up to this point, and we'll keep identifying it. Maybe it'll change tomorrow or whatever, but again, I think that's what you try to figure out as the head coach. Yeah.
Delandis, Rivals, Podcast.
Right, we saw Kyle run a QB sneak. He kept on that one read play. I'm just wondering if you can also use him in the ways you used Devin last week down in the red zone of the run game, or what difference have you seen between the two that each of them used Devin?
Yeah, no, it was good. It was good to see him get that pull. You can see he's capable, and then the next play gets the sneak, like you said. So, if we can add that part to the game, that certainly helps us a lot. And so we're going to keep challenging Kyle as well to do that.
You guys seem to have a maybe the most balance I've seen between like gap scheme and zone schemes in that game against Purdue. Is that more of this works against Purdue, or did you maybe stumble upon, we think our offensive line and backs handle this stuff a little better?
I think a little bit of both. You know, we looked hard, obviously, coming off the Maryland game to figure out, are we doing the right things for our guys? But then also that was a unique front. It was a 5 on the ball front, and we had to do what was best. So a little bit of both there. But, you know, when you do well, you have to identify why you did well. And then you got to be accurate with your assumptions.
Davis, Delaware Gazette.
This season's probably a little bit different than the last two in the way that you approach a game. Obviously, you have a young and a defense you can rely on to get stops. Now, I guess how has that changed your approach to the way you manage a game, the decisions you make, and why you make them when you make them?
Well, you go into the game trying to figure out, you know, you have different keys on offense, on defense, on special teams that you have to work on to get done. I mean, yeah, we identify those, but then you have to look at it holistically of, you know, how are you going to win this game? You know, how do you, and then sometimes you predict it and it kind of goes the way you think, and other times it doesn't. And that's based on what you have in all three phases. So, you know, and then the game changes. You get a feel for how the game's going, and you try to do the best you can to adapt, to come up with these plans for how to put your guys in best position to win the game. And, you know, at halftime, I say all the time, you're going to be winning, losing, or tied. Then you kind of figure it out in the fourth quarter. But this is going to be a 4-quarter battle. Always has been, always will be.
Justin Holbrook, WCMH.
I want to go back to Rob's question real quick. Why do you think this is a team that responds well to the way that you've been coaching this season? Case Over says this is a team that has scars from the past couple of years. Is it that? What do you think it is that is allowing you to coach them this way?
Yeah, I guess you know, we've all been through a lot together. Yeah, so maybe that's it. But I don't know. I don't have my finger on it. Maybe I'll have an idea after the season. But we're just going to go hard. We know what it takes to win games, you know. So we're going to go attack this thing as hard as we possibly can, and that's what we want. And I know that's what, you know, that's what we all want. That's what the fans want. You know, just to go as hard as we possibly can and swing as hard as we can. And again, that's what we're going to do on Saturday. But it starts with practice today. We got to have a really good and intense practice. We got to be flying around today. I get more worked up for a Tuesday and Wednesday practice, I think I've said that before, than sometimes on Saturday, because it's so important that we do well. So we'll keep swinging, and you know, this is a good group of guys. And like you said, we all have scars. They have scars, and hopefully, you know, the more battles that you're in, the more battle ready you are.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Yeah, the regular season is halfway over, but it seems like there's still so much we don't know about your team. I don't know if you have do you kind of agree with that there's still a bit of a mystery, just how good you are, and are your weaknesses truly weaknesses, or are they just, you know, normal steps in development? Probably say the same thing about Penn State.
Well, yeah, I was going to say you probably say it about a lot of teams right now across the country, maybe. You know, I mean, so I don't know. I don't know if I have a good feel for who we are as a team, but now it's time to go play, you know, again in a matchup game, you know, top 5 matchup again. And I think we certainly have learned a little bit about, you know, the quarterback. We've learned a little bit about some of the guys who we didn't know early in the season, but you know, our guys, and we have the pen to go write the script of what the season's going to look like, and that's really what matters. So, you know, a big part of what you're saying is going to be what happens on Saturday.
Obviously, you had a huge win against Notre Dame. This is the second big one. How much does at least having that experience give you confidence, or at least you know kind of where you stand from that game?
Yeah, it gives you a little bit of a barometer, I guess. But that game is so much different than this game. You learn a little bit from every game you play during the season. And that was a very good team. You can see what they did last week. So it certainly does give, you know, some guys who maybe haven't played a lot some confidence, knowing that, you know, we did win that game. And you know, we could have played better and won by more, but we didn't. And but we did win the game. So there's kind of that you know, again, barometer that you use to say, okay, here's what I know playing in a game like that. Here's what I know I got to do if I'm going to improve, because that was a couple weeks ago, and we need to be, you know, much further along than we were at that game.
And we'll wrap things up. Jim May.
Yeah, Jim May.
Show.
Yeah, good. Appreciate it, Jerry. I got about 100 questions. I'll only ask 2. Dallin Hayden, for example, 4 running backs. You know, you looked up last week, and he was your guy. You know, my point is going into a practice like this week where the other three guys were iffy for some reason or another last week, how do you apportion those reps in practice, knowing Dowlin's ready to go? I know you won't give me all the secrets. And then number two, do you focus more on what his shortcomings are, which look to be, for want of another term, pass pro? He could be a little bit better in that. How do you kind of manage that in a week like this of this importance?
I think you take a look at how the week goes. I think, like you said, you spread some of the reps around, and then you come up for air at the end of the week and figure out where guys are at, how they looked in practice, and
does he get more reps this week because of that? You think?
I think the guys who are out will still get just as many reps as well. I think you'll try to spread those around, and Tony always does a great job of that, which is why I think Dallin was ready to play in the game the way he did, because we do spread those reps around. And I know it's a question every preseason of how are you going to spread those reps around, and I always say, well, it's a long season, and so that's kind of what happened there. But Dallin has been getting reps in practice, and so I think that's give Tony credit for that, getting him ready.
To show up on Saturday, right?
I think so. Yeah.
And the other thing with Devin Braden, you don't remember this, but I asked you about this like a long time ago, 5 or 6 years ago. When you put something in, you say it's very important. You touched on this a minute ago, to not just have that one play, but to have tangents off of that one play and stuff. And with Devin Brown, does it give you more confidence now? Obviously he learned from fumbling at the goal line. Does it give you more confidence now to go to that? Much like Urban did with Tim Tebow, way back when, 2006.
Yeah. No, and that's why we did it, to see what it looks like, put it on the field. It's like one of those things, you just got to do it. And we did it. And, we already worked through one of the issues, and hopefully we're growing from that. But like you said, then you build on it because it is different. It does give you a little bit of a different change of pace. And so, yeah, I liked the look in his eye. I liked his competitiveness. He's got to learn from that mistake. But other than that part of it, I thought he handled the situation well.
Thanks, man.
You got it.
Coach, thank you very much.
Yeah, it seemed like Jermaine Matthews put some good things on tape when he entered the game. Or if Denzel isn't able to go Saturday, are you confident in his ability? And do you expect him to be used in a similar fashion, coming on the field with Jordan and some,
Yeah, I'm confident.
For a true freshman, he's got a lot of guts. He's got a lot of moxie. He's just talented, and he's shown the ability to make plays. So we're confident putting him in there. I could see a similar situation.
Rob Aller, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan Day was just in here talking about he coaches his team hard because it can take it and wants to be coached hard. Have you noticed him being a little more fiery this year, A, and B, do different teams have different personalities like that based on, who the leaders are or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. Every team is different. And, as coaches, we look for the best way to motivate them. And certainly with veterans, you can get after them a little bit harder, challenge them. And that's what we've been doing in practice. And, Coach Day is always fiery since I've known him. He's always very intense and very committed. And, he understands practice is what makes us better, particularly iron sharpens iron. So we really try to push them hard in practice.
Fourth row middle, Pat Murphy.
Jim,
24/7 Sports.
Jim, I think it was after the Notre Dame game, someone asked you about like a bend, don't break defense, and you kind of pushed back on that pretty quickly. What is wrong with being a bend but don't break defense in your mind, at least for what you guys want to do?
I don't know. I just don't like the way it sounds.
So how would you describe the change? What would you classify this defense as, given how you've changed, which we talked about quite a bit?
One that prevents points, and that's our job. The stop rate is so important because that's the job of the defense. No matter where you go on the field, you got to prevent points, stop points.
3 seats away, Andy Baxter, Letterman Road.
Jim, what stands out about this Penn State offensive line? Would you say that's maybe the biggest test your defensive line will face this season as well?
Yeah, Notre Dame was pretty good. Penn State is just as good. They're really big, really veteran players, and so they adjust well, and they can cover you up. Great size.
Far left, Whitney Harding, WCMH.
Jim, so much of going into the season focuses on preventing explosive plays. Penn State's last in the FBS in explosive plays, but they still score a buku of points. So what is challenging about that kind of an offense that just kind of grinds you out and still puts points on the board?
Yeah, and their time of possession is awesome, and I think most red zone plays in the country. You got to find a way the challenging part is find a way to get them off schedule. Like if they just stick to a schedule and they can move down the field, they've been very successful at that. So you try to knock them off, kind of get them behind the sticks. But winning the situations, the third down and red zone, that becomes even more important because if you can win the third down, it's like stealing a possession.
Middle left, Dan Holt, Lebanon Warriors.
Jim, we saw Cody Simon play a lot more this past week. Just how do you feel like maybe him and Steele compare right now in terms of how they're playing?
Yeah, they're neck and neck. Cody is continuing to earn more playing time. He plays both positions, extremely valuable. But he's earned the time, and he's extremely competitive at that position.
What do you think Cody brings to you when he's on the field versus what Steele brings?
Cody brings kind of an added dimension in the run game, because he's more of a Mike linebacker type. So when he's in there at will, he can be more effective in the run game. And obviously Steele brings a
stronger athleticism. Seems to be able to make more plays in the passing game and cover more space.
Doug Lane Reese, Kings of Columbus.
Jim, you guys at times right against a heavy package team or a run team will play three linebackers together. Could that be a possibility this week? Or the way you've talked about Sonny as he's almost like a Sam linebacker, would that just be like, no, we'll put Sonny down in the box and let him do that?
Yeah, we'll have both, but Sonny certainly gives us that flexibility to not have to, like we don't have to substitute because he can do both, but we'll always have both.
And when you have somebody like Drew Aller, he hasn't thrown a pick yet in his career. How do you sort of game plan maybe for a quarterback who takes care of the ball, but maybe, I don't know, isn't going to take a lot of chances, just any kind of quarterback who's sort of playing that stylistically?
Yeah, you've got to challenge receivers, in the intermediate area. He's really good at those passes, and you have to be able to put some pressure on him and kind of, present different looks to him just to kind of get him thinking. We got to push our rush and really defend that intermediate zone.
Far right, Nathan Baird, Cleveland.com.
I think coming into the season, people would have spoken a lot of respect about Singleton and Allen, their running backs. Statistically, it hasn't been that impressive from Penn State. I guess just what are you seeing from them as far as what this rushing attack is this season?
Yeah, I don't look at the statistics, but I look at the video, and it's impressive. They're hard running, a good 1-2 tandem. They hit the hole, and then they have the ability to bounce. They bounce plays a lot. So the film shows that they're really good, and they'll be a force to contend with.
You first get an indication that Jermaine Matthews might be, and I know he wasn't starting, but that he might be able to be a big contributor this season.
Yeah, really from the first day he arrived on campus. He's one of those guys that has a lot of energy. Like I said, he's got moxie, I call it. From day one, he was willing to step in there and compete, against some of the best receivers in the country. So when you see a young guy do that, you think he's got a chance.
Front row right here, Austin Ward, Rivals, the podcast.
Jim's, I don't know, a little bit of a mild surprise to see Caden McDonald out there making plays late. Maybe not a surprise to you, just me. Is he pushing in to expand some of the depth at tackle? What have you guys seen that he earned that opportunity?
Yeah, he has. Our offensive coaches tell us kind of what's going on scout team, and he gives them fits down there. So he's a guy that we wanted to look at if we have the chance, and he seems to be a real force inside. And he plays with a high motor, just a really positive kid. So. Yeah, I think he's got a chance to push into the lineup.
Jeremy Birmingham, the podcast, Rivals.
Jim, it's sort of unusual sometimes to see a player do things that, like JT Tumala used a spin move, I think, this year like 4 times, and every time he does it, it seems like it causes chaos for the quarterback and the offensive line. How much freedom does he have to experiment and do different things, or is it just a matter of in that moment he feels he's going to do that, or is he actively encouraged to not do that?
No, we like to let JT play because he's a guy who's going to come up. You've seen him come up with the big plays and the big moments. But there are calls that are different. There are defined rushes and things, and there are other calls where he knows that he can cut it loose, do whatever he wants.
Cameron T. Robinson, The Athletic.
Jim, kind of going back on Cody and Steele. Coming into this year, you mentioned you wanted to rotate more at linebacker. Is this kind of the snap share that you thought you'd have, or did Cody step up into taking into forcing the hand a little bit?
Yeah, no, this is what I hoped for, and Cody's earned it. So I guess the answer would be both. I mean, I hope to get this, and he's really earned it with what he's done in practice and when he's got his chances in the game.
Was it something early in the year that you wanted to see more from Cody before you gave him this role?
Yeah, I what happens in practice is the ones get most of the reps. So, we had to keep looking at our own rotation, I guess you would say, to make sure that he got more and more opportunities, in practice. And, he earned it.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Jim, what did you see from Jack Sawyer Saturday for him to get his first sack of the year?
Jack's always been there, man. He's been close. He's we faced a lot of quarterbacks that are getting the ball out of their hands quickly, which is good for our defense, but doesn't produce the high sack numbers. So he's been real close. It's just one of those things you knew was going to happen.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Another on JT. We all remember what he did against Penn State. That nobody's going to expect anyone to do that again. But what have you seen?
I expect him to do it again.
What have you seen from him this year in terms of, is he a better player now this year? What have you seen in terms of his growth?
Yeah, increased football intelligence. I mean, JT is a awesome player in his own right, just kind of doing his thing. But I see a guy who continues to understand more about the defense and his role in the defense, and where the ball is going to come out based on the call, all those things. He just has a greater understanding.
And we know Tyreek's, the things that with him have been consistency and the health. He's showing that this year. Is there anything that's happened kind of behind the scenes that you've seen that has allowed him to become really a dominating player?
No, I mean, Tyreek is just no. It just simply boils down to reps with him. The more reps he gets, the better he gets. So it's just really that staying healthy, like you said. The more practice time he gets, and the more chances he gets better.
Stephen Means, Nathan, Cleveland.com.
Just when Denzel left the game, I think the immediate decision was to put Jermaine out there on that field side, on the boundary side, but then there was times when Davis and Joseph was on that side and yours was on that side. Just, I don't even know how much of it you would want to get into, but in your scheme, what are the expectations for a guy playing field versus boundary corner?
More isolation to the boundary, more press to the boundary, more help to the field with the big space and the time and distance kind of factor. So just things happen a lot faster into the boundary.
What about Jermaine and Davis and the skill sets make them fit at that boundary spot?
Davison is long, he's aggressive against the run, what you see a lot, what you get, he's got to participate more in that into the boundary. And Jermaine is just, he got moxie, you know what I mean? Yes, said it like 3 times. He's just a guy you can, is going to compete, in those one-on-one situations. So he's a guy you can put pressure on.
You need that moxie dog mentality to play that position.
Yes.
Steve Hellway, 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, Coach, I want to ask you, Purdue had 8 plays on their first possession, missed a field goal. Then the next 3 possessions in a row, you got 3 and out, and had a batted pass and a sack in there to kind of force the punt. It just felt, watching it, that Purdue, both offense and defense, got demoralized as that half went on, and just were nowhere near as effective after that. How important was that to make those kind of negative plays, and the value of just getting 3 and out and getting the ball back, field position, all of it for your team?
Yeah, it's everything, really. I mean, to be able to deliver the ball back to the offense, that's our job, as quickly as possible without points. So, and I think there's a lot of momentum. I try to, there's, like you said, there's a lot of momentum, for the team, fans, whatever, guys on the sideline. When the defense is producing like that, everybody feels better. And I don't discount that because, it just creates momentum.
Tim May, Letterman Row on 3. Tim May Show.
Thank you, Jerry. You like to use the word moxie. Does Tyleek Williams have moxie? I mean, what sets him apart right now of what he's actually physically doing on the field? Because it seems like every week he seems to be even more of a factor.
Yeah, I'd say he definitely has moxie. He's got that never gets down, really positive attitude, and combined with athleticism. I mean, that's the biggest thing I'd say about that. It's athleticism. Like he strong at the point of attack, yes, but I'd say his real strength is being able to get off of blocks. Yeah, step around, move around, stunt, use his hands. I mean, that's his real strength.
And one other thing, these guys, the best defense I think they've gone against, maybe you might disagree, was Iowa this year. They threw the ball 43 times in that game. I mean, they're capable of lining up and just dinking and dunking, right? I mean, how do you prep for a team like that that's known kind of with those running backs, and yet Aller, and like Whitney was asking earlier, they haven't really cut him loose yet. I'm talking about throwing the ball deep. Just what's going on in your mind right now, like whirlwind kind of thing?
Yeah. Stop everything. Prepare for everything. Stop everything. Have answers for everything. Yeah, that's basically it.
But it shows they have faith in Aller.
Oh, yeah. Yes. He's talented. He makes good decisions. I think they feel like they have a full complement of offense, and we need to have a full complement of defense.
Got time for 2 more questioners. Tony Girdman, Buckeye Huddle.
Jim, how valuable has Jordan Hancock been to this defense, and how much relief has he given you at that nickel position?
Yeah, he's, the versatility, and I guess the fact that he embraced it. He embraced the move into nickel, and then you saw us being able to put him back to corner. So that's not as easy as it looks. Nickel position involves a lot of different matchups, different routes, different fits in the coverage. So really, it started with his willingness. He just wanted to learn and embraced it, and it's given us a lot of confidence, I guess. To be able to move him back and forth.
And then, is there a little part of you that is upset that Jermaine Matthews is not from Philly?
I never thought of it that way, but yeah, I mean, I never thought of it that way. But he's got that Philly kind of attitude. Go Phils, by the way. I see the hat. On our way to the second another World Series, right? That's right.
Actually, Bill Landis from the Broad Street Bulletin gets the last question today.
Is that paper still in existence? I think it's gone, isn't it? I used to deliver the bulletin when I was 4th grade.
The rate at which Tyleek is batting down passes at the line, is that just him like being an athlete, or are you calling things to like try to keep him in some of this?
I wish I was calling. Yeah. Hey, call that bat down pass play. No. That is strictly Tyleek being an athlete. I think we had like 3 last game. It's amazing, and what an effective factor for the defense. I think one time we busted a coverage. There was a guy standing wide open for the first down, and he batted it down. So that's invaluable.
And just thinking about Jordan Hancock and Sonny Styles, I know you've talked about one of the streamlined things with Sonny. Is there any part of you that is hopeful that maybe you can get to the point where those two can play together, or is that not something you want to like overload Sonny with?
Yeah, I think that would. I think it's a possibility. But yeah, I just go back to you have to pick and choose your moments because they're both making really good progress. So it's always that balance of how much to overload them with and how much just to let them play.
Coach, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim.
guys, good to be with you. I'll make these comments brief here. We're a couple weeks into our preseason, as we talked about at Media Day last week. We have a really, we have a really exciting opportunity coming up here with playing Dayton in an exhibition game. As some of you may know, Anthony and his wife, Chris, they have a really powerful story, a really personal, powerful story around mental health that they have, I think, just here recently begun to really take some time to share. And I give them a ton of credit for the courage it's taken to share that personal story. Anthony called back in the summer and asked if we'd be willing to play an exhibition game to start the season to really raise money around mental health and mental health as it relates to teenagers and college age kids. And he said this will give myself, our family, and my wife, Chris, an opportunity to share our personal story. And we really jumped in with 2 feet because I think it's a great opportunity to raise money, to raise awareness, to also hopefully give Anthony and his family some healing in the midst of this. So I'll let him or you kind of learn more about their personal story. Dayton's obviously a good team. There's history here, recent history, as recent as 2014 in the first round of the NCAA tournament. They're in Aaron's last game, I believe, in Buffalo. And then the last time I believe we played there was in 1988. So it's been a minute since we've traveled and played there. The game will be very much an exhibition game. We'll play different rotations, different lineups. In football vernacular, it'll be it'll have a little bit of a spring game feel in terms of trying different things, giving different looks, playing different rotations as we continue to tinker and prepare for our first game against Oakland. So just a couple words on that. We're really excited about this group. They've been working extremely hard. I cannot wait to get them on the court here on Sunday, but in particular to start the season against Oakland. So it's a really exciting time for us right now as we get moving forward. All right, I'll take some questions.
Chris, when you spoke with us at Big Ten Media Day last week, you said you had a couple guys still kind of banged up a little bit. Just what's the health of the team heading into this weekend?
Yeah, no real updates on Tayson still in going through his recovery from his procedure, Adam, and that's still going to take a few weeks. There's no real update on his timeline. Austin Parks has returned to practice. He's beginning to do some full court work today. And then we've had some other bumps and bruises, but nothing of note, just normal preseason. We're going long. We're hitting pretty much every day right now. And, that can beat up a body a little bit. So we'll taper back as we get closer to real games.
What will be the benefit of playing a game at this part of the preseason that isn't behind closed doors, that is going to be, warts and all, that's going to be out there for everyone to see?
Yeah, no, I think in most cases, as you know, the idea behind this is closed scrimmage, although those super secret scrimmages are really not super secret anymore, as we all know. Somehow we've got some moles in our program because you guys always figure out what the scores are in those particular games, which is really fine. I couldn't care less. We do have a super secret scrimmage the following week that many of you guys already know the opponent. And that will be I think we have really 2 early tests for our team. And again, you approach them very differently than you would a regular game. That's the reality. But I think both of these teams, I believe Dayton's picked to win the A-10. They're coming off a 20-win season. And the team we're scrimmaging is also picked to have a very good season.
Chris, you talked about the benefits of this game. You've done these scrimmages before, going on the road,
yeah.
A place like Dayton, you said sell out. How much does that impact, especially some of the young guys getting a chance to experience that, even though it will be still an exhibition?
Yeah, I think it's great. I really think it's great because that'll be an environment that will mimic really what a Big Ten road environment will look like. And it's early, right? It's October. You're throwing your group into that. I think the reality is having some guys that have been through some high level environments, road environments, having those guys returning that are going to play important roles for us really helps. But there's no question that's going to be a different feel than what you normally experience in these closed doors, almost like a classroom setting is what a lot of these, what these scrimmages are. And going on the road and doing it is, I think, we look at it as a great opportunity. And I think it's, again, we're looking at it as another practice, another opportunity to get better. But obviously, it's against someone else, which I know our guys are welcome.
Hey, the idea of having this opportunity to play to raise awareness for mental health is a cool chance for you to talk about what that means for your program, even though a lot of this is Dayton focused. Obviously, Coach Day has a big mental health initiative. What priority in your program is mental health, the resources you have available to your players, and how do they take advantage of those?
Well, as many of you know, the university and the athletic department really, I think, was ahead of the curve in making this a priority years ago. I think Gene led the way with that. In terms of the staffing and the therapists and counselors that are available, and beginning the conversation years ago, I think that was, again, I think we were ahead of the curve, and certainly we have the resources to make that a priority. I think as far as a head coach's responsibility and our staff's responsibility, I think it's important to have open dialogue about what it looks like, what mental health looks like, and what taking care of yourself looks like, to normalize this whole process of young people going through struggles that they go through. And when I had a chance to talk to Anthony, I think he brought some great insight, and as it's such a personal story to him, talking about his daughter and what she went through during the years of the pandemic, and some of all the struggles that young people went through there. So I think it's I think each program and each staff here that I'm in contact, I know I've talked to Ryan about it, take it very seriously. I think it's true for young people. It's true for all of us sitting in this room that it is really important to prioritize that. And on another note, I do think that one of the things I've learned as I've advanced in years here a little bit is I often feel like I'm in the best place with my self-care when I'm thinking about others and when my life is centered around helping others. And I think it's always a good lesson for all of us.
It's kind of hard to transition back to a basketball question after that, but I'm curious, when you have a new team, every year it has a little different feel to it. Can you give us a sense of what the maturity of this team feels like early in the year, their ability to grasp what you guys want to do?
Yeah, good. Yeah, really good. I feel really good about it. Again, having some guys returning that played important roles, like Bruce, Roddy, Felix, Zed. Having some older guys, been really pleased with our 3 transfers that we added. So I think it's been really good. Obviously time will tell, but we've had some really good leadership. I think we have those sophomores that have taken another step as players and as people. And in Bruce's case, I think he's really grown as a leader.
Chris, on the mental health part, you have to be amazed and delighted with how far this pendulum has swung from when you were a player, maybe even at Gardner.
Yes.
I mean, would you have benefited from this back in the day as a player? Or, I mean, the stigma was there then.
Yeah.
It's not now. I mean, how far has this thing come?
Yeah, I can't imagine going into my coach and asking him if I could see a therapist. That's how far we've come. I just couldn't imagine doing it. And, or my trainer, it just wasn't common. And, in some ways, and I never got this impression from him, but he, many of you know, I was super close to him. He's since passed, but it was not normalized in any way. So, I think that, it's come a really long way. And again, I give our athletic department a lot of credit for it. But, the reason this was I think we jumped at it, and we've talked about, I know for 7 years now here, I've gotten grief from Dayton fans about never playing them, and trust me, it's been pretty consistent. We have talked about playing in the past, and I'd be open to doing a home and home with them at some point for sure, as we almost did it a couple years ago. But this is so unique because it's so personal to Anthony and his family. And I think that's why I got tremendous respect for him. That's why we jumped at the opportunity.
Basketball question.
Sure.
Last year we were watching Roddy. He's just kind of going along. Boom. Late in the season, tournament, he just comes on. How important is something like that for a kid to really just come into this year like a 180 almost?
Yeah, I think finishing like we did was important for everyone, but certainly for him with the way he played to get some confidence against good teams and to finish 5-2 down the stretch. He didn't really kind of hit his stride until the last few games of the Big Ten tournament. We saw glimpses of it in practice. Now for him, I think he's got to take the next step as a player, and that is really how consistent is he going to be, and that's what's sitting in front of him, the challenge. How consistent are you going to be? For us to be good in what we believe we can be this year, Roddy has to take a real consistent step forward.
You mentioned the transfers. Want to ask about Dale, especially now Taysom now, probably an important ball handler for you guys at the moment. Probably will be this season anyway. But
yeah,
are you expecting him to be the kind of player he was at Baylor, or are you expecting even more scoring or want that from him this season?
Oh, I anticipate him playing a bigger role than what he did at Baylor. Dale Bonner's been he's been really good for us. He gives us a speed that we haven't had. He's the fastest player we've coached here from end to end for sure. He just has tremendous quickness and speed with the ball. And he's a little bit slight in build, but he's been able to really shoot the ball. We're going to need him to play a bigger role. He's playing behind a couple NBA guys there at Baylor. We're going to need him to play a bigger role, and I think he's ready for it.
Hey, Chris, how do you fix the Ohio State run game?
I was hoping you'd ask that.
Beyond that, last year about this time we talked, and you had kind of hinted that you saw something really special with Bryce last summer. How do Scotty and Devin, similarly ranked kids coming out of high school, high expectations?
Yeah.
How have you seen them adapt to this level, and what are you expecting from those guys?
Yeah, I think Bryce had this natural ability to kind of get a bucket even when he was being challenged or closely guarded. He was a tremendous isolation player. Those guys have different games. They have different strengths that they bring to the game right now. Scotty right now is probably of our freshmen, not probably, he is of our freshman ability to come in and impact on both ends. But I think they all will have moments this year. I think the reality is if our team grows like we expect it to, we may not need to rely on our freshman class as much as we did last year in terms of just throwing minutes their way, which I think is healthy for them and for our team. I think Devin's shown real improvement here in the last couple weeks in his conditioning and his fitness. But again, I think that's a high bar just in terms of Bryce's proficiency scoring to place on anybody. But they have different strengths that they bring, and certainly both of those guys will impact our team.
You and Ryan Day, it seems like there's been a little bit more simpatico, the podcast stuff that he was on, over the summer. You guys, obviously, as a program, need the football program for recruiting visits. Now, how vital has this relationship been between the two programs in the last few years?
Well, since I've been here, really. I mean, Urban was tremendous as soon as I got here. We've since stayed in contact and stayed in regular communication. I never forget him coming over. I think he was working in the office, came over during the Michigan State game when we beat him there. But those guys have, both of those guys have been great. They've been, our wives, we have dinner together. We built a friendship. I think there's a commonality in terms of, being at this place. And I think it's grown into a really, beyond just a working friendship. It's grown into a friendship. So big fan of him, big fan of his leadership, and can't wait for this weekend.
Hey, Coach. Obviously, this is the third season in a row where Dayton has sold out their regular season schedule. They love basketball down there at Dayton. What kind of elements of their culture would you like to have emulate up here at Ohio State?
Well, I love their arena. Excuse me. Love their arena. Love the size of it. And I love ours as well. I just think, they have a pretty compact place. Had the chance to see it for a minute over the summer. And we know for years, right? For decades, not years, for decades, that place has been really passionate. I think they have, one of the great basketball fan bases, and most people who follow college basketball know that they have one of the great basketball fan bases in the country. And I'm really excited for our group to play in front of it, because it is a tremendous following. So, kudos to them for doing that. It's been that way for years now. They're pretty consistent in that, as they always have been. They love their basketball, and that's part of the reason why the first 4 games have been there in the NCAA tournament.
Had an exhibition again last year against Chaminade, objectively a lower caliber team than Dayton. How important is it after a disappointing record last year to open your season against higher caliber teams like Dayton and the double secret scrimmage team?
Well, as I mentioned, it's an opportunity for us to get a chance to see how we perform against a really good team, a team that's expected to win their league and be an NCAA tournament team. I think that gives you great feedback. Again, it's not. It'll be coached differently than a regular season game. That's the reality of it. We'll look at different rotations, different lineups. We're not going to play guys as much as we would when we open against Oakland, but it'll give us a really good test and information to take back.
Hey, Chris. Simple question, maybe not a simple answer. What are you hoping to get out of this game? You mentioned different rotations and things, but on individual kind of guys and play in basketball, what are you hoping to get out of this?
To see how our guys respond in that element against another good team, against the physicality that they're going to bring. They have a really good frontline player. It'd be great for us to see how our guys operate against a really good frontline player, as well as a talented guard. They got a couple preseason all-league guys. So anytime you're going into this, you only look at it as a coach and as a really positive thing, because you get all of this immediate feedback that you can take back. And in some cases, if you're struggling or if a guy's struggling, you might leave him in there a little bit longer, just for him to experience and work through that a little bit. These are the kind of environments where you do that.
I'm sure you've talked with the guys and they know the story and they know what you guys are doing and why. How important is that at the beginning of this season for them to have those conversations with each other and begin that bonding and building and getting to know each other on a different level?
Well, I think that takes time, as you know, Whitney. That takes time for teams and for guys. We did a cool thing here a few weeks ago where we spent some time away from campus, away from their phones, which was really well received, as you might imagine. And it was a really good thing. But I think those kind of conversations, how personal those can be around mental health and maybe what a kid's struggling with, they take some time to develop. And I think we're getting there for sure.
Yeah, Coach. Felix Akpara, just curious about him now 3 weeks in or so. Are you getting the sense that he's making that step to where he could be a 20-minute, 25-minute a game type player? Because when he played those kind of minutes in the tournament last year, it felt like he was changing games and impacting games.
Yes.
He was able to stay on the court.
Yes.
What do you like about him, I guess, if he's able to do that?
A lot. Yeah, I like a lot about him. Just what you said. He impacts the game in a lot of ways. And I think for us, he's going to need to be able to play those kind of minutes consistently. He is, he's still, his offensive game is still evolving, and he's got to make sure he understands kind of who he is and what his strengths are. But his offensive game is growing and evolving. But when you're 6'11" and you have, almost a 7'2.5" wingspan, and you're a relatively quick jumper and you're a good athlete. And beyond that, he's got a real intelligence he brings to ball screen coverages, to ball screen defense, to reading actions, to understanding how to play certain actions, whether it's a wide pin down or a stagger or a STS or any type of action. He's got a real feel for those things that I think is maybe a little bit uncommon for a young guy. And I think that's helped him on that end.
Just following up on Devin and Scotty, Bryce and Malachi kind of got thrown into the fire. It worked because, they're one of them NBA players. So is there a benefit to having guys in front of Scotty and Devin where they don't necessarily have to get thrown out there from day one and they're asked to do more?
For sure. In both cases, benefit for our team and benefit for them. Because if you remember back to Malachi struggled up until January. He played like a typical freshman up until January. And he benefited when we beat Duke here when they were number 1 in the country. Everybody was focused on other guys, E.J. Liddell, Kyle Young, Zed Key, and he was able to benefit and slowly come along and then really hit his stride. I think if you're going to have a good team, you have to be relying on your older returning guys at this level and then hope that your freshmen gradually come along. And that was the case in Malachi. Bryce had some maybe bigger, earlier moments in terms of scoring. But I think in a perfect world, you have some guys that can kind of help bring them along. And at some point they hit their stride. And as we all know, Malachi, we turned things over to him late in games. The Indiana game here, when we beat him, we kind of turned things over to him. And that's when you started to see him really come into his own.
They don't have to do that, but if they had to, could they?
Well, that remains to be seen. Yeah, I think it's too early to tell. And I think, again, that's a lot to put on them. I want them just to play to their strengths right now. I think that remains to be seen.
But when you're looking at how this lineup could be constructed, there's a lot of different options you guys have, especially, in the front court. Just, I guess, how much experimenting, obviously there's going to be plenty of it against Dayton, but how much do you keep the starters out there and guys that are, you see as big time contributors for this season and kind of move them around as opposed to playing younger guys?
Yeah, I think there'll be more mixing up than what there will be in the Oakland game in the start of the season. I think there'll be more changing of lineups. Who we start in this particular game may not be who we start in 2 weeks. Very well could change. That's not decided yet. We still have a number of practices. We have two exhibitions. So there'll be a lot of tweaking and moving around.
A few minutes ago, I heard you talking about hitting. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Or is that kind of because you're in the Woody? You're talking.
Yeah, partly. Partly
that,
play.
You
I always consider myself a football guy, so I was going to answer the running question.
I don't know if you're putting on pads or, you see video over the years of guys whacking dudes.
Clay, I was an assistant wide receiver coach to start my coaching career, by the way.
Well, let's hear more.
No, we should not hear more about that. We should definitely not hear more about that. It was a short stint.
Okay, so hitting entails what?
So when I say hitting, yeah, it's a good question. It's a fair question. I think right now, when we're saying hitting, it's a lot of scrimmaging. It's body on body contact. It's really a physical practice. So you have bumps and bruises, and we've got guys that are banged up in that area. I think I mentioned that when I was asked about the injuries. So we have guys that are banged up because they've got bumps and bruises because of the constant hitting that's going on right now. Yesterday we went for about 240. That's longer than what we're going to go in season, and a large part of that was hitting.
But that's good prep, right?
Sure. I think that's needed. Coaches vary on that. Some coaches might worry about injuries or just say, hey, it's October. Why are we hitting this much? It's a really wide variety of people in terms of philosophies on what they want to do this time of year in terms of length and the number of minutes they're hitting. All that stuff gets evaluated and talked about in the preseason, but we're doing a fair amount right now.
No whistles allowed there, right?
No out of bounds, no whistles.
Chris, I asked Felix a couple weeks ago what a good number of minutes was for him. He said 20 a game. Sounds like you're on board with that. Is that what you're plotting out? Is logistically that possible?
That he would play 20 minutes?
With Zed and everything like that, are you confident that you can get that?
We'll play the best players the most minutes. Appreciate the question. Yeah, that's what, those guys will battle it out. Best player will play the most minutes. Anything else?
Yeah. You mentioned that the possibility of a Holtmann home against Dayton.
Yeah.
How likely is that to happen? What are the upsides? What are the downsides?
Well, I think it's got real possibilities. As you guys know, I've not shied away from playing people in state by any stretch. We did a Cincinnati home and home, so we'll certainly consider doing it again with Dayton if it works out. As you guys know, I think it's not quite like football where schedules are out, maybe 5 years in advance, but it's a couple years in advance. But yeah, we would like to. My philosophy on home and homes is just we really want to play good tournament type teams in non-conference games. That's what we want. That's what we typically have scheduled, and they're certainly in that category for sure. All right, thanks, guys.
The Buckeyes